Right now, there is a loaf of bread sitting on your kitchen counter or stuffed into your pantry. And if it's one of these 7 mainstream American brands I'm about to show you, you've been feeding your family ingredients that are literally banned in dozens of countries around the world. I spent weeks pulling apart ingredient lists, digging through laboratory data, and reading the regulatory filings that major food corporations hope you never look at. Out of the 10 brands I investigated, only 3 passed every safety and nutritional check I could run. I will reveal those clean options at the very end of this video. For now, we need to focus on the 7 imposters you need to get rid of immediately. By the time you finish watching this, you'll find out exactly how major industrial bakeries use deceptive cosmetics to turn cheap white flour into healthy brown loaves. I'll show you the specific chemical additives hiding in your morning toast that researchers are actively studying for metabolic disruption. And we'll break down a legal loophole that allows a notorious industrial chemical used in yoga mats and shoe soles to slide right into American school lunches. Stick around, because the most shocking, legally documented chemical offense on this list comes near the very end, and it's sitting on the shelves of your local grocery store right now, before we name the specific brands. We need to establish a basic educational foundation so you understand exactly how the commercial bread industry operates. See, real bread is incredibly simple. Historically, human beings made it with just 4 basic components: flour, water, yeast, and a pinch of salt. That's it. It's a living, fermenting food. But the bread you buy at standard US supermarkets like Walmart, Target, or Kroger isn't a product of traditional baking. It is a product of highly optimized industrial chemistry. The goal of a mass-market food corporation isn't to nourish your body, it's to maximize shelf life, ensure absolute cosmetic uniformity, and cut production costs to the absolute bone. To achieve this, the industry relies on a heavily processed foundation known as enriched bleached flour. Think of it like a car manufacturer taking a perfectly functional, high-performance engine, completely stripping out the cylinders, pistons, and fuel injectors, and then throwing in a cheap plastic carburetor so they can legally still call it an engine. In natural wheat, you have the bran, the germ, and the endosperm, which together hold over 20 essential vitamins, minerals, and life-sustaining fiber. The industrial milling process aggressively strips away the bran and the germ because the natural oils they contain cause bread to spoil faster on a store shelf. What you're left with is a dead, starchy powder that your body processes almost identically to pure white sugar because this refined powder is completely devoid of nutrition. Federal law mandates that manufacturers add back a tiny handful of synthetic vitamins, specifically iron, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and folic acid, so they can slap the word enriched on the bag. It is a brilliant marketing illusion. They steal $20 from your wallet, give you back 5, and expect you to thank them for being generous. Crucially, the natural fiber is gone forever. You go from roughly 13 grams of fiber per cup of genuine whole wheat flour down to a miserable 3 grams in the refined version, to hide the flat, chalky taste of this stripped-down flour, and to keep the dough soft enough to survive weeks in a delivery truck, corporations pump the mixture full of hidden sugars, high-fructose corn syrup, and industrial dough conditioners. They use synthetic emulsifiers to force water and fat together into a pillowy texture that never occurs in nature. Every single fact dug up from laboratory reports shows that modern commercial bread is engineered for maximum palatability and infinite shelf life, not human health. Every paragraph of these ingredient lists reads less like a recipe and more like a chemical inventory, which is exactly why so many families are feeling sluggish, bloated, and entirely betrayed by the brands they trust. Let's tear into the actual brands dominating American aisles, starting with the least shocking offenders and moving straight to the corporate heavyweights eats. Number 7 is Nature's Own Honey Wheat. Owned by Flowers Foods, one of the largest packaged bakery producers in the United States, Nature's Own positions itself as the wholesome, soft, family-friendly choice. The packaging uses warm, earthy tones and a rustic font engineered to scream healthy school lunch. But if you flip that bag around, the very first ingredient blows the wholesome image apart: enriched bleached flour. All white flour comes from wheat, so putting the word wheat on the front is a completely meaningless cosmetic trick. The FDA does not require a single speck of whole grain content for a bread to display the word wheat on its label. Each slice contains roughly 3 grams of added sugar. Build a standard sandwich with 2 slices, and your child is consuming 6 grams of sugar before you've even added peanut butter or jelly. The honey in the name implies natural sweetness, but lab panels show the formula relies heavily on regular sugar and molasses to cover up the bitter, flat notes of stripped flour. Sodium sits at a heavy 170 milligrams per slice, meaning a single sandwich delivers nearly 15% of a child's daily recommended limit from the bread alone. Then come the chemical stabilizers. Nature's Own utilizes calcium propionate, an industrial mold inhibitor. A landmark study published in Science Translational Medicine by Harvard-Th. Chan School of Public Health researchers found that calcium propionate can trigger spikes in glucagon, leading to insulin resistance and metabolic disruption in human subjects. While the sample size was small, the fact that a basic daily staple relies on a preservative linked to metabolic chaos should make any parent pause. They also toss in DATEM, an acronym for diacetyl tartaric acid esters of monoglycerides. This is a synthetic dough conditioner used in massive factory vats to make bread unnaturally soft and uniform. It is a chemical crutch designed to mimic quality baking without the time or expense. What makes this a textbook corporate scam is that Nature's Own actually manufactures a genuinely clean 100% whole wheat line with zero artificial preservatives and minimal sugar. But they know the engineered softness and sweet profile of the honey wheat loaf is what hooks the average consumer, pulling in massive margins at the expense of your metabolic health. Moving along the aisle, number 6 is Sara Lee Honey Wheat. This brand, controlled by Bimbo Bakeries USA, has been embedded in American household culture for generations. It carries an automatic aura of Midwestern suburban trust. Yet, looking past the classic script logo reveals an ingredient panel that is functionally identical to budget white bread dyed brown. The leading component is refined, synthetically fortified, enriched wheat flour. To give it that deep, healthy-looking hue, mass-market manufacturers frequently employ caramel coloring. CBS News ran an extensive investigative report titled "White Bread in Wheat Bread's Clothing," documenting how industrial bakeries use caramel color to manipulate shoppers into buying cheap white flour dressed up as unrefined grain. Class 3 and Class 4 caramel colorings are chemically processed with ammonia or sulfites, creating a metabolic byproduct called 4-methylamidazole, or 4-MI. California's Proposition 65 explicitly flags 4-MI as a potential carcinogen, requiring strict warning labels on chemical products, yet it slides completely unannounced into your family's morning toast. Sara Lee Honey Wheat also carries a high processing concern rating from the Environmental Working Group due to its heavy cumulative additive load. It utilizes calcium propionate, sorbic acid, DATEM, mono and diglycerides, and cellulose gum. This isn't food. It's an emulsion experiment designed to sit on a supermarket shelf for weeks without turning into a science project. If you already feel like checking your own kitchen pantry to see what your family has been eating, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the corporate corner cutting gets significantly worse from here. Number 5 lands on Pepperidge Farm Farmhouse White. Pepperidge Farm, a premium subsidiary of the Campbell Soup Company, charges a massive premium for its products. The paper-like packaging and the farmhouse moniker evoke images of a small-town artisanal bakery. It's an elaborate marketing theater designed to justify a higher price tag. In reality, a single slice of Farmhouse White packs an astonishing 230 milligrams of sodium. Build a regular sandwich, and you are eating 460 milligrams of sodium before adding a single slice of deli meat, cheese, or mustard. That makes it one of the saltiest mainstream commercial loaves on the market, offering more sodium than a standard individual bag of potato chips. Furthermore, despite its premium price point, specific varieties in the Farmhouse line have historically listed high fructose corn syrup on the label, the exact mass-produced industrial sweetener health-conscious consumers pay extra to avoid. The ingredient deck is rounded out by the exact same cheap chemical stabilizers found in budget generic brands: calcium propionate, sorbic acid, and DATEM. But the true peak of absurdity is found in Pepperidge Farm's light soft wheat variant, which actually contains sucralose. They are putting a synthetic, zero-calorie artificial sweetener typically found in diet sodas into a staple loaf of bread marketed to health-seeking families. Recent clinical trials continue to investigate sucralose for its disruptive impacts on gut microbiome diversity and glycemic responses. Yet industrial bakers dump it into bread to keep the calorie count low on paper while maintaining artificial palatability. Real farmhouse bread goes stale in 3 days because it's made of actual living ingredients. If your farmhouse loaf stays pillowy soft on the counter for 2 solid weeks, that isn't freshness, that's a triumph of chemical preservation. Number 4 is Arnold Whole Grains Honey Oat, another prominent label under the Bimbo Bakeries umbrella. Arnold presents itself as the premier choice for fitness enthusiasts and health-focused households. The front panel boasts about whole grains, honey, and oats, leading you to believe you are buying raw, unadulterated nutrition. The actual ingredient list contains over 25 separate components. Traditional, authentic bread requires 4 or 5. Arnold needs an entire paragraph of text because their base product requires extensive chemical assistance to maintain structural integrity. A single slice contains a staggering 5 grams of sugar. A quick 2-slice sandwich dumps 10 grams of sugar into your system from the bread alone, which is a higher sugar concentration per ounce than many commercial cookies. The honey oat naming convention implies the sweetness is drawn from natural hives, but the ingredient registry reveals that the heavy lifting is done by standard white sugar and corn syrup, with actual honey buried far down the list. The rolled oats on top are largely cosmetic, yielding a mediocre fiber count that barely registers compared to true whole grains. It's packed with sodium stearoyl lactylate, mono and diglycerides, datem, and calcium propionate. In Germany, strict federal bread regulations decree that any loaf labeled as whole grain must derive at least 90% of its flour content from the intact, unrefined kernel. Traditional French bread laws legally restrict baguettes to just flour, water, salt, and yeast. Meanwhile, American corporate brands like Arnold require 25 industrial ingredients to create a highly processed facsimile of grain bread. Utilizing legal loopholes to sell you sugar-laden white flour wrapped in a health-conscious illusion, number 3 is King's Hawaiian Sweet Rolls. While not a traditional sandwich loaf, millions of American parents use these iconic orange packs as dinner sliders, barbecue buns, and school lunch staples. The ultimate danger here is that consumers are serving literal pastry dessert and calling it dinner bread. Each tiny individual roll contains 5 grams of added sugar. When a parent uses 2 or 3 rolls to make lunchbox sliders, the child consumes 15 grams of pure added sugar from the bread base alone. To put that into perspective, the American Heart Association strongly recommends that children consume no more than 25 grams of added sugar across an entire day. A single lunch item claims 60% of that allowance before the child even touches a snack or a drink. The formulation is loaded with heavy oils and butter, spiking the saturated fat content far beyond any normal baking standards, while offering zero dietary fiber or real nutritional substance. Nutritionists across the country widely classify these rolls as a confectionery treat rather than a meal component. Beyond the nutritional catastrophe, the brand has faced legal scrutiny regarding its heritage marketing. A major consumer class action lawsuit was filed in federal court alleging that the packaging, which prominently highlights Hilo, Hawaii, and Est. 1950 deceptively misleads shoppers into believing the product is still baked in the islands using traditional regional methods. The rolls are actually mass-manufactured in a massive industrial facility in Torrance, California. While a federal judge ultimately dismissed the legal claim based on strict statutory definitions, the corporate strategy remains clear: leverage an authentic, cultural image to mask a highly processed, high-sugar product engineered for addictive palatability. Number 2 brings us to great value wheat bread, the omnipresent house brand of Walmart. Because it is priced aggressively low, it sits in millions of working-class kitchens across the United States as a budget-friendly staple. But the economic savings at checkout hide a severe nutritional deficit. The top ingredient is enriched flour, meaning it is a structurally stripped white loaf dyed brown with heavy doses of caramel coloring to deceive low-income shoppers looking for whole-grain nutrition. Great Value specifically utilizes high-fructose corn syrup as its primary sweetener, alongside calcium propionate and a standard array of cheap chemical emulsifiers. Because Walmart scales its production by contracting out to massive, third-party commercial bakery conglomerates, quality control is frequently compromised. Over the last few years, public health logs and consumer protection databases have recorded numerous instances of foreign material contamination within Great Value bread lines. Real consumers have reported finding jagged plastic shards, metallic shavings, and unidentified black rubber fragments baked directly into the loaves, traced back to degrading machinery and rushed inspection protocols at third-party regional plants. When production lines are forced to run at breakneck speeds to fulfill multi-million-unit corporate contracts for big-box retailers, routine maintenance and ingredient purity are treated as secondary variables, transferring the physical risk directly to your family's breakfast table. Taking the absolute number 1 spot as the most compromised, highly engineered commercial loaf in America is Wonder Bread. It is the definitive icon of American industrial food production, and it is a metabolic disaster. Wonder Bread is built on the classic industrial framework of ultra-refined white flour, high-fructose corn syrup, and aggressive preservatives. but it secures the top spot because certain regional varieties, such as the Wonder Giant Sandwich White Loaf, still list azodicarbonamide on their official ingredient panels. Azodicarbonamide is widely known in consumer advocacy circles as the yoga mat chemical because its primary industrial application is as a blowing agent in the manufacture of synthetic foam rubber, shoe soles, and exercise mats to add industrial elasticity. The FDA originally rubber-stamped azodicarbonamide as a flour bleaching agent back in 1962, and that regulatory framework has never been modernized. In the decades since, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, Singapore, and over 40 other nations have completely banned azodicarbonamide from their human food supply due to safety concerns. When azodicarbonamide undergoes the high heat of industrial baking ovens, it can degrade into semicarbazide and urethane, which the International Agency for Research on Cancer explicitly categorizes as a Group 2A probable human carcinogen. While major fast food chains like Subway and McDonald's aggressively purged this chemical from their menus following intense public backlash, Wonder Bread has continued to leave it on the labels of specific retail loaves. You can literally walk into an American grocery store today and buy a household brand containing an industrial rubber stabilizer that the rest of the developed world banned decades ago. It is the ultimate manifestation of a broken food system that prioritizes corporate convenience over basic biological safety. And now, what it was worth watching all the way through for. We are finally leaving the chemical laboratory behind and stepping back into the world of genuine food. The transition from processing nightmares to legitimate nutrition is your reward for paying attention, because the next three brands have completely rejected the cost-cutting, synthetic playbook of the industrial giants. If you want to keep bread as a staple in your household without compromise, these are the only three labels that deserve your hard-earned money, starting at number 3. The most accessible and mainstream clean option on the market is Dave's Killer Bread, specifically their 21 whole grains and seeds variety. Founded by Dave Dahl after spending 15 years in the correctional system, this brand operates as a dedicated second-chance employer, proving that systemic change can start right inside the bakery. Philosophically, they treat bread as a dense source of real fuel rather than a fluffy delivery vehicle for cheap corn syrup. Every single batch is strictly USDA certified organic and non-GMO project verified. Instead of using isolated white starch, their recipe is anchored by a dense, unrefined blend of flax, sunflower pumpkin, sesame, quinoa, millet, and rolled oats. When you bite into a slice, you immediately notice a heavy, hearty, rustic texture with an audible crunch from real seeds, a massive physical contrast to the pillowy, chemically inflated structure of mass-market options. From a data perspective, one standard slice delivers an exceptional 5 grams of dietary fiber and 5 grams of plant-based protein. The fiber and protein are completely organic and structurally intact, meaning they naturally slow down your digestion and keep you full for hours. Now, we don't idealize any brand here. Dave's Killer Bread does have one notable downside, and that is its sugar content. Each regular slice contains roughly 5 grams of added sugar derived from organic cane sugar and molasses. If your family is strictly managing sugar intake or dealing with direct insulin issues, that number is higher than ideal, and you should opt for their Power Seed line instead, which replaces the cane sugar with natural fruit juice. At roughly $6 to $7 a loaf at stores like Target, Costco, or Safeway, it is undeniably more expensive than generic store bread. But that financial markup is entirely justified because you are paying for actual organic seeds, premium unbleached grains, and the total absence of industrial dough conditioners like Datem or synthetic mold inhibitors. It is an excellent, highly accessible upgrade for active households who need maximum density and clean nutrition from their daily sandwiches. Dave's Killer Bread is show 2, moving up to number 2, is Silver Hills Sprouted Bakery. This brand takes commercial baking a massive step forward by returning to an ancient, fundamental biological process, sprouting. Before their organic whole grains are ever milled into flour, Silver Hills humanely soaks the seeds in water, allowing them to naturally germinate over several days. This biological awakening activates essential plant enzymes that systematically break down locked starches and proteins, making the inherent vitamins, minerals, and amino acids dramatically more bioavailable for your digestive tract. In simpler terms, your body can absorb the iron, zinc, and B vitamins effortlessly, rather than treating the grain like an indigestible block of starch. In practice, a slice of Silver Hills has an incredibly moist, nutty flavor profile and a dense, satisfying weight that makes conventional commercial white bread look like a joke. Nutritionally, it packs an impressive 6 grams of unadulterated protein, a mere single gram of sugar, and a modest 140 milligrams of sodium per slice. Their commitment to clean formulation is flawlessly backed by laboratory standards. Silver Hills does not touch calcium propionate. To protect against mold, they utilize cultured wheat flour, which is an entirely natural fermentation byproduct that safely extends shelf life without throwing your metabolic hormones into chaos. The direct trade-off here is availability and shelf life. Because it lacks aggressive synthetic stabilizers, a loaf of Silver Hills will not survive on a warm kitchen counter for 3 weeks without developing natural mold. It needs to be stored in the refrigerator, and it can sometimes be challenging to locate outside of dedicated health food markets or premier regional chains like Whole Foods and H-E-B. But for consumers who want an uncompromised, low-sugar, high-protein grain option that respects traditional biochemical processes, it is a flawless choice. Men's Journal taking the absolute #1 spot as the definitive gold standard of human nutrition in the baking aisle is Food for Life Ezekiel 4-9 sprouted grain bread. Every single bread product in America, commercial or artisanal, is ultimately measured against this single loaf. What makes Ezekiel 4-9 an absolute triumph of food engineering is a single astonishing fact. It contains absolutely zero flour. Not refined flour, not whole wheat flour, absolutely no powdered grain whatsoever. Instead, Food for Life takes whole intact, organic grains and legumes, specifically wheat, barley, millet, spelt, lentils, and soybeans, sprouts them completely, and mashes them directly into a living, nutrient-dense dough. The specific combination of these 4 grains and 2 legumes isn't just a gimmick. It creates a complete plant-based protein containing all 9 essential amino acids, achieving a protein efficiency rating that rivals milk and eggs. The ingredient panel is beautifully brief, listing just 10 unadulterated components, all of which are recognizable whole foods with sea salt and yeast finishing the list. Clinical testing reveals that Ezekiel 4-9 carries an incredibly low glycemic index score of just 36, whereas standard white bread routinely spikes the blood sugar charts at a dangerous 75. This means your body processes a slice of Ezekiel bread as a slow, sustained release of fuel, completely preventing the violent insulin spikes and subsequent mid-afternoon energy crashes caused by standard commercial loaves. Because Food for Life refuses to use a single milligram of chemical preservatives or cultured shelf stabilizers, this bread is sold exclusively inside the freezer section of major retailers like Walmart, Kroger, and Whole Foods. You must store it in your home freezer and toast individual slices directly from a frozen state. It does not possess the soft, pillowy, elastic pull of a chemically conditioned loaf. It is dense, distinctly rustic, and explicitly designed for functional health. It costs more, it requires refrigeration, and it demands a slight shift in your kitchen habits, but it is the closest thing to honest, historical bread available on a commercial supermarket shelf today. Now that you know exactly which brands to toss out and which ones to keep in your shopping cart at Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, or Costco, let's talk about execution. You need a highly actionable strategy to protect your family from marketing traps the next time you step onto the grocery floor. Consider this your definitive visual cheat sheet, the rules you want to memorize or screenshot before you head down the bakery aisle. First, the leading ingredient rule. The very first item written on the back panel must explicitly read 100% whole wheat or sprouted grain. If it simply reads wheat flour, enriched flour, or unbleached white flour, you are holding a dressed-up loaf of empty white starch that has been cosmetically manipulated with industrial dyes. Second, run a strict inspection for high-fructose corn syrup, which often sits right near the top of cheap commercial options. If you see it, or if you spot artificial sweeteners like sucralose hidden in a light loaf, put it right back on the shelf of your local Kroger or Safeway. Third, apply the 5-gram sugar ceiling, check the nutritional facts panel, and ensure the added sugar count is below 3 grams per individual slice. Keeping an eye out for brands like King's Hawaiian that pack dessert-level concentrations into a dinner roll. Fourth, watch out for industrial dough conditioners. Look closely for acronyms like DATEM, or terms like sodium stearoyl lactylate and mono and diglycerides. These are chemical stabilizers used by factory vats to force water and fat together, mimicking a soft texture that natural baking cannot produce without real-time and quality ingredients. Fifth, execute the physical freshness test. Give the bag a gentle squeeze right there in the aisle at Aldi or Publix. Real bread crafted without severe synthetic intervention naturally begins to harden and dry out within 3 to 4 days of baking. If that loaf feels unnaturally soft, pillowy, and completely hyper-elastic, meaning it bounces right back like a piece of memory foam. You are paying for an extensive cocktail of mold inhibitors rather than honest, unadulterated food. Oasis app. To bring this entire investigation home, the core takeaway is remarkably simple. The modern American food industry is systematically built on cosmetic deception and chemical convenience. Corporations spend hundreds of millions of dollars on warm, rustic packaging to make you feel like a responsible provider, while filling the actual product with industrial shortcuts like azodicarbonamide or high-fructose corn syrup to maximize their own corporate profit margins. To stop being a passive victim of big-box marketing, you only need to make one major shift in your thinking. Stop reading the front of the bag and start reading the back. When you dictate your grocery choices based entirely on raw laboratory metrics and clean, unrefined ingredients rather than slick advertising scripts, you reclaim complete control over your family's metabolic health. Thank you so much for investing your valuable time with me today to expose what is truly sitting on our grocery shelves. If this investigation completely changed the way you think about the basic bread sitting in your pantry, do me a massive favor and hit that like button right now. Share this video immediately with a friend or a family member who makes school lunches every single morning, because they deserve to know exactly what they are feeding their children. I want to hear from you directly down in the comments section below. Which of these 7 bad brands is currently sitting on your kitchen counter right now, and which major consumer product category do you want me to tear apart and investigate next? Don't forget to subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss another hard-hitting expose protecting your household's health. Take care of yourselves, stay vigilant out there, and I will see you in the very next video.